Good evening. Welcome to the Cabinet meeting on, I was going to say Thursday, on Tuesday the 5th of December. So we are not expecting any fire alarm testing today. In the event of an evacuation, you will hear a recorded message requesting you to evacuate the building. Please leave by the nearest exit and the Riviera Centre will assist you. Once outside, please assemble in front of the tennis courts to the seaward side of the building. Could I please ask that all mobile phones and electronic devices are on silent, which is always a good prompt for myself as well. At this point, I will ask the clerk to run through this evening's meeting, how it'll work.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that we are operating hybrid meeting arrangements with officers and councillors who are not members of the Cabinet having the option to join the meeting via Zoom, and are also live streaming this meeting via the Council's YouTube channel to encourage more people to engage in our public meetings. Please can I remind everyone to use their microphones when speaking and turn them off when finished. Please can attendees present in person refrain from watching the live stream or joining the Zoom link, as this will cause interference for our viewers. Anyone attending the meeting remotely must use their raise hand function when they wish to speak and to declare any interest at the appropriate time. If anyone attending the meeting remotely loses connection, the meeting will continue and you will have the option to follow the meeting via the YouTube live stream. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. And before I get underway this evening, I do want to just talk a little bit about enforcement and some of the issues that we've got across the Bay and what we are doing to resolve some of those. So we know, and we've been hearing from our residents and community on a regular basis, that our town centres need our attention. We want to make these spaces a safe and vibrant place to visit. And through our own resident survey, which we ran before we were elected, and from the feedback that we've had from the council's own engagement events and the residents' satisfaction survey in the summer, we have heard from residents what is causing them the most concern. Our town centres are unfortunately suffering from a range of issues, and these are in the form of antisocial behaviour, littering, and street drinking. And these are issues that we are determined to resolve. We want to tackle this by using a multi-pronged approach. To start with, we want to renew the Bay-wide Public Space Protection Order, also known as a PSPO, for dog fouling. And before Christmas, we will be putting out that consultation on this PSPO. In the new year, we will also be consulting on putting in place a PSPO around drinking alcohol and associated behaviours in all our town centres. This will help us to address those antisocial behaviour issues we have all experienced and witnessed. To support these PSPOs, the Council are looking at introducing new enforcement officers and street wardens who will be able to enforce these new powers. They, along with the police, who have their own powers to tackle these behaviours, will be able to work together to start to clean up our town centres, making them better and safer places for our residents, businesses and visitors. At the same time, we are also introducing a new team into the Council, made up of 3 police officers, housing officers, social worker, rough sleeping and mental health staff working from a single location embedded within the town hall. This will allow us to provide more of a one-stop shop, one-stop solution when dealing with some of the council's street-attached people. So I think it's really important. We, as I say, we know the issues and we are determined to resolve them, and they are some of the approaches that we are taking forward in this administration. Okay, want to move on to the agenda, and so we start off with item 1, which is apologies.
Chair, we have an apology from Councillor Tranter.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 2, to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the Cabinet on the 21st of November of this year. I'm happy to move that from the chair. Do I have a seconder?
Very happy to second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you indeed. All those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 3 is a disclosure of interests. Does any member have a pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest in any item on this evening's agenda? Thank you. There are none declared. Item 4, pleased to say we do not have any urgent items this evening. So we'll move straight on to item 6, which is the future structure and operation of TorVista Homes. Councillor Tyerman.
Thank you. Members will recall the decision taken back in October to halt certain activities within TorVista, write off certain losses, and create a budget to fund ongoing activities to March 24. The decision we took then also required that our Director of Finance bring a further report, and that report is now presented. First of all, I'd like to thank our Finance Director, Malcolm Coe, and many other people who I know have contributed to putting together this report, including our Chief Executive, our Monitoring Officer, our new Head of Strategic Housing and Delivery, Sam Irvin, who's there for anybody who hasn't met him. And in fact, in doing this, there was an input from a lot of people within adult services, children's services, elsewhere, and I've forgotten, of course, to mention our Director of Pride and Place. So a lot of work has gone into feeding into this report, and I thank everybody who's engaged with that process. I'd like also to thank TorVista Board for their engagement, and in particular, I'd like to thank Rick Williams, Chair of the Board, for the time he gave up to expressing his views and proposals in discussion with myself and with Councillor Chris Lewis. Members will see in the report that the recommendation is to close down TorVista as an independently operated company and to bring into the Council all the activities of both managing existing properties and developing and actioning new schemes for accelerating the provision of affordable and social rented housing, focused on meeting both the general and the specialised needs of residents in Torbay. The recommendation requires the Director of Pride and Place to bring forward detailed delivery plans as to how we will achieve that acceleration of provision, and members of all political groups will be consulted as part of that process. It's my intention that we certainly meet and have a first discussion to scope out what we are doing of that probably early in January. Other elements of the recommendation lay out some of the main activities which will need to be undertaken as part of the transfer of TorVista to Torbay Council. Further work does need to be done to establish the precise mechanism for how we will manage the activities in the future that are currently carried out by TorVista Homes, and in doing that, we will also be looking at the potential of merging the management of various other activities in the Council where it makes sense that such merger should take place. The report before you lays out why some of the ambitions which the Council had for TorVista Homes have not been able to be achieved, and a lot of those were considered when we discussed this subject 2 or 3 months ago. So I won't spend a lot of time going back through that. But I'm quite happy to answer any questions that colleagues or other members have on this subject. And colleagues around me, officers around me, will help fill in some of the details if that's also required. So just to summarise, the there's quite a long list on the recommendations. Many of them are operational in nature, explaining how some of the steps will be taken to bring back TorVista activities and assets into the council. I won't go through those. I'll ask you just to take those as read.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Timon. I understand that Councillor Billings is going to be seconding this report.
Yes, I will be seconding, Mr. Chairman. I think it's important to recognise that the reason that this proposal is coming forward now is because running an external building company is in many ways a diversion of resources from the needs of what the local community want in terms of the provision of affordable housing. And if we look at what has gone wrong in other areas around Devon, we've had in Mid Devon, we've had Three Rivers, which has cost the council £21 million. In Exeter, we've had Exeter City Living, which has gone wrong, which has cost the council there £10 million. It's, in my view, very important that we don't have a situation where the council or members are in any way deterred from doing the much needed work of providing affordable housing through the different ways those can be delivered by concerns about costs coming back on the council through an external building company. And recognising what hasn't worked in other places, I think is very important in that it informs our thinking in terms of what's appropriate for our location. And I think there's great scope, as Councillor Timon has alluded to merge activities which at the moment previously were being done by different arms of the council. And it would never be a case that in a private sector business, some houses were managed in one different way in one team, and another set of houses were managed in a different way through a different team, through an arm's length company. That's akin to the situation we had previously, and I think there's great opportunity to deliver the things that were originally conceived and deliver the objectives why TorVista was originally set up in a different way, and that's why I'd be seconding this proposal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Open up for any debate or questions from around the table. Councillor Bye.
Very pleased to support this and particularly draw attention to the recommendation C. The Council will develop detailed delivery plans setting out how the Council will accelerate the provision of new affordable housing targeted to meet Torbay's local housing need, specifically including social rented housing and affordable rented housing. Little Roman numeral 2, the provision of accommodation for strategic priority areas including extra care, supported housing for various client groups, temporary accommodation, and, drum roll, 4, care experience young people. So I'm very, very pleased that the request that we accelerate the provision, I think we may have some good news on that subject of accommodation for care experience young people in the not too distant future. I'm very pleased that care experience young people are mentioned as a particular group within this recommendation. So I'm very pleased to support it. Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bye. And I think it is worth, at this point, just clarifying, because you clearly spoke about the revised recommendation, and I just wanted to make sure from Councillor Timon and Councillor Billings that we have just proposed the revised recommendation, which is subtly different from the recommendation that appeared in the online papers around 1C1 and further slightly up. Can we go to Councillor Timon for confirmation on that first, please?
Absolutely, and the revised recommendation has been published in the papers now. So that is the latest one that's in the papers that you can find online at the moment. And yes, it does subtly differ from the original one that went out 3 or 4 days ago.
Thank you. And from our seconder?
Yeah, no, that's entirely correct, Chairman.
Thank you. I thought it was just worth confirming that. So any more debate from around the Cabinet table before I go outside of the Cabinet table? Thank you very much. So let's move outside. And Councillor Cowell first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, colleagues. And I'd just like to recognise that following those discussions that we've had amongst the opposition groups with Councillor Timon in terms of the recommendation, to be honest, I wasn't comfortable with the original proposal, so I'm pleased to be in a position that I can support the recommendation as amended, particularly with the development of the working group, whatever it may be entitled. And I'm pleased that Councillor Timon has confirmed that we'll have an initial scoping meeting in January. I think that is important. And also the addition, and I think this is significant given the housing challenge that we have in Torbay, particularly for affordable and social rented, that there is specific reference in there, which I know was important to many members of the opposition groups, and indeed I think it's fair to say that the council as a whole. So I'm pleased to be in a position to be able to support this move forward. And I think reflecting upon TorVista, it was actually developing or set up to develop in a very different time to where we are today. And of course, there's been significant pressures with the economy, for example, and costs escalating in developing. I'm pleased to welcome Sam to the council because I think his experience will actually really help us on that path to delivery. And I think it's not only learning about the failures elsewhere in the country, and there's a whole reason why some of those housing companies have failed. It's not a one-size-fits-all. But engaging somebody like Sam, it's about being able to explore best practice elsewhere and what really works. Because the most important outcome that we all want in this room is for the delivery of a housing supply that meets the needs of Torbay's residents. So, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cowell. Councillor Long.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And, I spent this morning having breakfast with Councillor Bai at the Business Forum, and it's great to spend the evening here as well in the same room as yourself, Councillor Bai, again. I just wanted to say that we best be careful lumping TorVista in with other housing companies such as Mid Devon, because as Councillor Cowell alluded to, they're not all the same. And I think the Mid Devon model was different to the TorVista model. I won't stress into it now, but TorVista was much more under the last administration about focusing on the housing strategy and affordable homes, whereas the Mid Devon model was more about making money and not necessarily aimed at affordable housing. But putting that aside, the other thing I wanted to say was that the issues affecting TorVista in terms of difficulties getting the schemes going were not faults for TorVista. I think we need to stress that. Nothing that company did was wrong or bad. It was affected by the issues affecting the economy and trustonomics, and that's affected many other companies, building companies up and down the country. I think that's important to say for all the people who work for TorVista. It's important to stress that. On to more positive comments, I want to thank the administration for the significant improvements to the report compared to the original one. And there's a much greater stress on giving attention to more general affordable housing and in particular social rent, and that wasn't in the original report, so we're grateful for that and very pleased that that is now in and makes it something that we can support. The one slight concern that I have, which is not a deal maker in terms of support, but just a general concern I wanted to flag, was the issue of timescales, and there is a slight concern that given from the start of the process in October to by the time everything is done and dusted and settled and we're moving on to physical projects, it could be the best part of a year, maybe less than that, but a significant number of months by the time we've done applying for IP status, which could take the best part of 3 months, and delivery report writing, and all the sausage machine that we'll have to go through. So I think we will would be appreciated if we could have a greater sense as things go on timescales and not just sitting behind talk of things happening at pace. I think we need a bit more than that, but just to mention that in passing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Any more questions or debate from outside of the Cabinet table? Any comments back on the table? Okay, in which case I will move to the vote. Can I just... Yes, indeed, Councillor Timon.
Sorry to be too late coming in. Just to pick up on the last point made by Councillor Long, to reassure him that one or two schemes that are in process, like St Kilda's, are continuing. We hope to have a paper to Council on that one in February. That will not need to wait until this review's taken place. So that project is progressing. Sam Irvine is working on that in conjunction and keeping me in touch with developments. And we will be following that up by looking at Tor Marine and progressing that one with all due speed. So at least those two projects will not be held up by waiting for anything to happen. And I think we're all aware of the need to accelerate quickly through the stages of bringing TorVista back in so that it can be as seamless as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Timon. We'll go to the vote. Just to remind you that the recommendations are on page 27 and 28 of the agenda, and they are the... Okay, so they are the... So my apologies then. They're not on page 27 and 28 at all. They are the revised recommendations published, I think this afternoon, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay, so all those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Move on to item 7, if I may, developing a resilient future for Oldway. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't propose to go through the report in detail. I would point out the purpose of the report, which is stated, is to present the outcome the National Lottery Heritage Fund supported developing Resilient Future for Oldway project. The project was supported in 2022 and committed to the development of a master plan for Oldway Mansion and its grounds. So we now have that master plan. The report provides an overview of the master plan, some of the current repair maintenance issues at the site, and makes a recommendation in respect to the potential solution for Oldway. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend item 3, which is the recommendations, and replace item 4 under 3 recommendations. I'll read it out. That as a matter of urgency, the Director of Pride in Place, in consultation with the Director of Finance, Cabinet Members for Place Development and Economic Growth, and Cabinet Member for Housing, Finance and Corporate Services, identifies funding of circa £1 million for an initial programme of repair and maintenance to ensure that the mansion is wind and watertight. And I think that's important that we have the recommendation that outlines that we take this seriously and we want to make the mansion wind and watertight as soon as possible. I'd like to also say a big thank you to Catherine Finley, who was the project manager, for all the hard work she did and producing the master plan that we have before us. Unfortunately, she can't be with us tonight, but I'm sure the Cabinet, the full Council and the residents of Torbay will give her the thanks for this report. I'd also like to thank the Oldway Mansion and Grounds Working Party for all the work that they've put in over the past 18 months in getting to where we are. And also those on the ground at Oldway who do a superb job. The Gardeners Group, Peter, Joe, Sue, and many other volunteers that turn up to make the grounds what they are today. If we didn't have those people doing it, then not only would the mansion look in a sorry state, but so would the grounds. By having those volunteers who give their time freely, we have the grounds that we have that still make Oldway a great place to visit. Also like to support the Friends of Oldway, Kathy, who's here today, Iris and other people who've also put time in to help. And of course, Kathy, who runs the cafe at Oldway, has done it under difficult circumstances, not to mention the rain. So thank you to them. But the master plan has taken over a year to develop. And I hope you have all read it because it does make good reading. And full consultation before that master plan has been finalised took place with over 1,800 people taking part. The vast majority of those people who took part were very, very positive. And they wanted to preserve the mansion history and heritage and working with the community. And I think it was a community project. Those 1,800 people who responded, it's one of the highest number of people who have responded to a council consultation. So well done to the community and those people who did respond. And I think it comes out of the report, the future of Oldway is not a quick fix. I mean, I know that. I was sitting probably in this very room or in Oldway 16, 17 years ago when we had an Oldway working party to find a solution. And here we are again trying to find a solution. And it probably will take 10 years until we've actually finished the project. But what we have to do is to start. We have to start by finding a partner, well, in the private sector and the public sector, to work with it. We can't do it alone. We need a partner. And we will be going out to those people who've shown an interest in working with us for Oldway. We need to find the money. I mean, you know, if you look at the report, up to £54 million to do the master plan to get where we are at the finish of Oldway. It's not going to be easy. We've got to work with the Lottery Heritage Fund, who have given us money to produce the master plan. We've spoken to them going forward. Hopefully they will help us with some of the funding. We have other people, the Arts Council, who we can go to. And of course, we have included it in the Levelling Up partnership. So hopefully we might get some money from there. Our first priority is to make the mansion wind and watertight. And that's why I've put that new recommendation forward, so no one can be in doubt that we mean business, and this time we will find a solution. And it has to be a long-term solution for Oldway, and I can promise you that we will find it. One way or the other, we will find a solution for Oldway. The time for talking and the reports are now over. We have to deliver to what should be Torbay's jewel in the crown. I hope that my fellow cabinet members will support me going forward, and I know that the full council, the community out there, they are desperate to find a solution and to get cracking on Oldway. Now's the time, as people say, and now is the time to deliver on Oldway. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. I'm delighted to second this report. Oldway Mansion is a project that I genuinely believe transcends politics. The mansion continues to be a valued heritage site for Paignton. It's much loved by both residents and visitors alike. Mansion has sat empty for many years, and after a recent visit, I know that water ingress really is the main problem. The most important first step has to be to make the building wind and watertight, which would allow the building to not only dry out, but protect the inside from any further deterioration. The report is extensive, but it also provides a real insight into the potential costs to bring back the mansion into full usage, i.e. £54 million. A massive undertaking for any local authority, and even more of a burden for such a small authority such as Torbay. But tonight's report should be celebrated. The report could have not been reached without the support of the National Lottery Heritage Fund, nor without the work already undertaken by our community. The Resilience Project is an essential first step to restore Oldway and to give it a new lease of life. The report doesn't provide a funding strategy, and clearly that needs to be the next step as we move forward. The project will inevitably come forward in a series of phases, and phase 1 has to be the roof and to make the mansion wind and watertight, and we intend to make that decision this evening. We have already been very fortunate with heritage money and levelling up money, and we continue to work with national government as a priority place for levelling up. So I do believe we continue to have opportunities. However, we must demonstrate that we are committed to projects ourselves, and that means putting our money into these schemes at the front end. We will never be able to get serious sponsorship stroke funding if we don't commit to starting the project. Making the mansion wind and watertight is a positive first step and will be the stepping stone to help us move forward in a positive direction. At this point, I open up to the Cabinet if any members have questions or comments or debate. In which case we'll move outside of the Cabinet and we'll move to Councillor Cowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and clearly I welcome the emergence of this report. It feels a very long time in coming. The whole project of Oldway was an absolute priority that we made in 2019, and it has, as Councillor Thomas has alluded to, always been a cross-party concern, and that is the way that we would absolutely hope to see it continue as we move forward. The mansion transcends politics. It is at the heart of Paignton. It's Paignton's jewel in the crown. In fact, I would say it's one of Torbay's crown jewels, and it's important that we find the pathway forward to actually find the funding to complete the restoration. And I think we do need to manage expectations. We're not going to see it converted in the next 2 to 3 years. It will be a lengthy project. Just consider how long Tor Abbey and its various stages have taken to be delivered and completed. And that will give you some idea of the scope of work that Oldway will require. It absolutely makes sense to make the building wind and watertight. And I know when I was last inside, ironically, it was more of the dry rot because of the extensive heating that had been left on in former days that dried out part of the building, rather than water ingress that was more of the problem. I would echo Councillor Lewis's recognition and thanks to Catherine Finlay, the Friends of Oldway, the many volunteers, the Garden Group, and indeed the Oldway Working Party, which I was privileged to have chaired for 4 years. And I think it all demonstrates the absolute commitment and love for Oldway. It is going to be a massive challenge, we recognise that, and I welcome the inclusion of a specific sum in the revised recommendation. I think that's a sensible direction of travel, and I would hope that the £100,000 revenue support will continue within the base budget for Oldway in addition. I would also hope that as we move forward between the Cabinet and opposition groups, that we all have a significant involvement in what is going to be one of Torbay's most prestigious projects going forward. Finally, a plea on behalf of the Friends of Oldway and Cathy, who sits behind me. Many of you who have been into the tea rooms will know that it was a funded project by the Friends of Oldway and is significantly supported by volunteers. The challenge they have at the moment is they have a leaking roof, a leaking ceiling, not to be confused with the main building and its roof, but the flat roof that is one of the terraces in front of Oldway. They need it repaired because it keeps leaking. And I understand from Cathy that they've had a quote to do the repair, and it's a matter of a few £1,000s, which they are willing to fund. And I think in the spirit of moving forward in partnership and collaboration, that we should be asking Alan Denby as Director of Place to be talking to TDA colleagues to ensure that that minor piece of work, which will be an interim solution, which will last 3 to 5 years, which will probably dovetail nicely into the longer term project, that is completed, because the tea rooms are an essential part as much as the gardens are at Oldway. So if colleagues could take that away and consider it and respond to Cathy and the Friends of Oldway, I think the people who use those tea rooms will be immensely grateful. But I'm happy to be supportive of the direction of travel and the emerging master plan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cowell. Councillor Darling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's been alluded to as a jewel in the crown, and it is the fact that there are a number of jewels in the crown that actually make them shine that much brighter. Clearly, when one looks at the pavilion, there's another one that's dulled down, but as far as Torbay, that is shining brightly, and we do need to ensure that all of them begin to shine, because they are complementary jewels in that crown of Torbay. I won't repeat too much of what Darren said, but it has been a work of the community in many different facets, and we need to acknowledge that and thank people for the hard work that they've put in that world. I'm aware that when I knock on doors in my own patch in Torquay, in the Barton and Watcombe world, people say, what is going on with Oldway? How can we drive that to where it needs to be? And the crucial thing is, it does have to be a mixed outcome for it. It can't be all within the gift of the local authority. And this master plan does demonstrate that we need different funds and different opportunities to drive that forward. I would echo the plea around supporting the tea rooms. It is a little gem that we have on site at the moment that gives a hook for many community opportunities there, and I would hope that we can be supportive of that. The last bit that I wanted to just explore, which I'm slightly confused by, Mr. Chairman, is that I'm aware that at full council my fellow Liberal Democrat colleagues put forward a notice of motion which identified a sum of £100,000, and officers have stated that needs to be moved on to February's full council meeting to be identified, because there's no funding, that there isn't any clear funding identified where that money will come from, and yet a rabbit out of the hat of £1 million can be presented to this meeting by Councillor Lewis, and it sounds as if it can be nodded through. I'm just confused as to why does community safety over road crossings of 1/10 of the cost of this one get so far down the priority list of the local authority. I look forward to an explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Darling. Going to move online now, please. At the moment, I've got one hand, which is Councillor Johns. The floor is yours. Good evening and welcome to the meeting.
Thank you very much, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I echo Chris Lewis. Thank you, all the volunteers. I think it's great, all the work they've done, and thank God they've been involved since 2013. Basically, I support these recommendations, and I'm really pleased about the amendments. So thank you, Chris Lewis, for bringing that up. That's really nice to hear. I also I'm basically saying exactly the same as Darren Cowell and also Steve Darling, but I just want to put my own little word in, is because not only am I as a councillor just on the cuff of Oldway Mansion or campaigned to support it, but also it means a lot to me personally. So that's why I'm really pleased to hear this. And basically, I just hope this never happens again and we can find people to work with us. And basically, that's all I wanted to say. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Councillor. Just going to check online. Have we got anybody else? Didn't want to miss anybody online. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Anybody else within the room? Anybody, councillors in the room? No? Okay, come back to the table then. Any further debate? Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. I don't know whether you want to cover Councillor Darling's about the motion. And my view is that the motion that you've put down for the 100,000 has no paperwork behind it or no officer input. Clearly, Oldway Mansion have been working on that for 18 months with a solid document behind it, but maybe the Chief Executive or the leader might take that up. Councillor Cowell, we want full involvement. I mean, I remember, we've just heard from Councillor Cat Johns, I remember sitting down at Oldway with her mum, trying to find a solution, working on the Oldway Working Party with bless her, Ian Doggett as well. And we thought we had a solution, but it didn't work out that way. We cannot make that mistake again this time. We really must find a solution. We've got to find the money. We have the support of the Lottery Heritage Fund. We have the support of the Arts Council. We have the levelling up bid. So there's no reason why we can't all work together and find that solution. I think that covers all of it. The Working Party, I think it would be nice for the Working Party if we actually made it in person as well. I think you get a lot more done when it's in person. And, you know, very often it's a conversation before and after the meetings that make the difference rather than the actual meeting itself. So we've got one coming up which will be virtual, but after that, hopefully we'll make it in-person meetings. I think I've covered everything, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. So there was a question raised that was kind of semi-related.
Oh, sorry, Chairman. The roof. Kathy, I feel dreadfully sorry for you. I had a flat roof in London and I spent thousands on it and I never found the leak. But I've spoken to Alan Denby again tonight, and if we can work together and try and find a solution, because it can't go on.
There is a solution. There's been a report done by the Historic England specialist. There is a solution.
Right.
The report was handed in about a month ago. So we can't act on it.
Okay, well, I've just spoken to Alan Denby. I promise you, we will do all that we can, and if we're not doing what we can, send me another email and we'll chase it up, because it's not fair for all your volunteers and everyone else to have to work in that environment. So we will do our best, I can promise you that.
Okay, to try to answer the question that was raised by Councillor Darling, who spoke about a notice of motion that's coming to Thursday evening, or at least has been deferred back till the next council meeting. So that notice of motion was for an exact sum to be taken immediately. The decision tonight is to identify monies. So depending on where those are actually identified from, appropriate decision making will need to be followed moving forward from this evening. So effectively, the difference being this is in principle, this is the way forward. There will have to be a further route forward through the that we often refer to as a sausage machine within the council, and but the notice of motion that you placed, I understand, was for an exact sum, and that was from immediately. I hope that helps, but I think otherwise we'll take that offline. But thank you very much indeed. So we shall. I don't want to stop the conversation on Oldway if there is any more debate. In which case, we will move then to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to item 8, which is for youth provision, and it's a report of the Children and Young People Overview and Scrutiny Sub-Board, or at least, yes, from those. Councillor Bye.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I was very pleased to attend the meeting on, I believe it was the 23rd of October, when the Children's Services, or the Overview and Scrutiny Sub-Board that looks into children's services issues, considered youth provision in the Bay. They came up with 3 recommendations. Firstly, about priority being given to setting up a mentoring group or safe space for young men in Torbay. Priority be given for youth provision and so on in the King's Ash ward, and that ward councillors be kept informed of the activities taking place within their wards to support young people. Do you want me to read through the response, the Cabinet response to those three recommendations?
I think that would be helpful.
Okay. So in relation to number one, that priority be given to setting up a mentoring group or safe space for young men in Torbay, the response is that via our family hubs, we can confirm that the following actions are in progress. Voluntary, community and faith sector providers are able to use family hubs buildings for delivering parenting support and targeted outreach activities such as dads, male carers and toddler groups, family film nights or drop-in play and stay sessions. 2 health visitors being trained in Institute Health Visiting, PNMH, which is perinatal, mental health and supporting dads. This training has also been cascaded to multi-professional workforce. Maternity support workers in community teams do one-to-ones with vulnerable families and dads. We also run a weekly young men's football group as part of the youth service and run male-only activities and camping trips over the holiday periods as part of the youth service offer. We will take this forward, this recommendation, forward via our youth participation workers and request that they support us in identifying what services will be most beneficial for young males in this area. Item 2, that priority be given in the King's Ash ward to work with the community and voluntary sector and other agencies to help families and young people to reduce antisocial behaviour. The response is, we are aware of the increased incidence of antisocial behaviour in the TQ3 area and have been working with the local community, police and voluntary sector partners to increase provision available in the area. This includes an assertive outreach programme of street-based youth work and looking to commission a youth club in the area. The Youth Justice Service is also working with more children from the TQ3 area, many of whom have been referred because of antisocial or offending behaviour, and is providing prevention or diversionary activities and interventions. Our Family Hub project also targets underserved communities. For example, in Baby Week, we are hosting 3 baby showers in the most deprived areas, including King's Ash, to encourage those communities to access family hubs. We are also exploring spikes in data so we can deliver services to any underserved areas. On that particular issue of the King's Ash and TQ3, the week after the Overview and Scrutiny Sub-Board considered youth provision, I attended a further meeting of the Youth Justice Board, and as I explained at the Overview and Scrutiny Sub-Board, the youth offending is prevalent in the TQ3 area, and in fact, if anything, in the report we were given at the Youth Justice Board a week later, it's actually got rather worse. I'm sorry to say it's only not got any better, but it is the TQ3 area, not just King's Ash. So it's not all of TQ3, they're all very well behaved up in certain parts of Preston, but it is not just the King's Ash ward. So please, I made that clear. That was an issue I kind of raised at the Overview and Scrutiny Sub-Board, and it was confirmed in the Youth Justice Board meeting a week later. There is an issue, a significant issue in TQ3, not just King's Ash. Then item 3, the recommendation 3, that ward councillors be kept informed of the activities taking place within their wards to support young people and to reduce antisocial behaviour so that they can help communicate this. The internal communication team, this is our response to the recommendation, the internal communications team provides regular briefings to councillors, there shouldn't be an apostrophe there, and have offered to be the central point of contact moving forwards to ensure that these updates are provided. A briefing on the baby shower info will be included in the next update. It was a very constructive meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Sub-Board, and I was very pleased to be there. And I think it was recognised that there was quite a lot of youth provision underway in the Bay, and that we have actually put 5 contracts in place in the summer of new youth provision, 2 in Torquay, 2 in Paynton, 1 in Brixham, commissioning the voluntary and community sector to deliver youth services. So it's a very positive meeting. Those are the recommendations, and I hope that colleagues will take those responses in good spirit. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bye. Councillor Billings, I understand you're going to second this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do. As Councillor Bye has outlined, there's a great need to ensure that we put appropriate provision to helping our young people develop in ways that allow them to positively contribute towards our society and tackling areas of antisocial behaviour and those problems. And he's outlined the thorough approach that his area of responsibility is putting forward in relation to the recommendations of the Overview and Scrutiny Board, and that's why I'm delighted to second these proposals. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Any questions, any debate from around the Cabinet table? Any questions or debate from the wider room? Thank you, Councillor Law.
This one? Yeah. Great. So thank you for the response. It was, as Councillor Bye says, a great meeting. I think a lot of people have been surprised by actually how much youth provision there is available in Torbay. And more of that information is being put together on our Family Hub's website. So that's the place to be going to actually find out about these sorts of things. Just a couple of things. I'm glad Councillor Bye explained the PNMH, because I think we need to make sure we're not putting acronyms in our responses that go out to the public. And the other thing I'd like to say is about the TQ3 area. Absolutely true, it is the wider area, but there is a particular area of issue within the King's Ash ward and that King's Ash area. I know there's a lot of work going on around that, and there's a lot of community groups that are active in that area. But it is particularly that I don't necessarily consider youth justice diversionary work was what I was actually thinking of within this. The same as the dads things. This should be about youth work, and I was hoping to get specific answers to youth issues. So a baby shower is not really what I consider to be a youth activity. But it would be good to keep us informed, all the councillors, if that could happen going forward. That would be really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Any more debate? Sorry, it's said just to councillors, I'm afraid. Thank you. We'll move back to the room then, or to the, sorry, out of the virtual room is where I was going to be. Back to the Cabinet. Any further debate around the table? All those in favour then please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Move on to item 9, which is the Framework Agreement for Temporary Accommodation and Housing Standards. Councillor Tyman.
Thank you. I think, like many of these contractual things that come before us, relatively simple, relatively straightforward. Here that we have an arrangement in place to provide maintenance and repairs for conducting things to do with disabled facilities grant. We wish to extend that the framework to carry out minor repairs on the newly acquired temporary accommodation buildings that we have. Most of those aren't very old or not been with us very long, and therefore it's quite a low level of activity at the moment, but as the years progress that will increase. And also to carry out repairs and maintenance that are needed in terms of housing standards. There is no additional costs to the council within this. One half of that, the temporary accommodation, is already catered for within the budgets that are there. The other half is carrying out work that is generally able to be charged on to the property owner, recovered by us, and therefore is cost neutral. But we do need to have easy access to contractors to carry out this work, and this will just simplify the whole process going forward of how we manage that. The details are there within that. It's really very simple. I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Bai, I understand that you're going to second this one.
I'm very happy to second what seems like a very sensible proposal. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Any questions on this one from around the table, around the room, or in the virtual room? Okay, thank you. In which case, all those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. We move on now to 2 notices of motion, and I intend to do these slightly differently to the way that we did them last time. The Constitution is a little bit of a muddle on the motions, so I am going to invite the promoter and then the supporter to present to the Cabinet, and then we'll provide a response. So at least that way, hopefully, we give the promoters and supporters the opportunity to talk fully about their motion. So the first one is inclusive street design. Notice of motion promoter will be Councillor Mandy Darling. Thank you, Councillor Darling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And inclusive street design, as the motion says, is what it says on the tin, really. It's where the network of requirements of cars, buses, pedestrians all come together to ensure their needs are met, covering 5 major areas. Accessibility, making sure that the areas are accessible to everybody who needs to use them. Safety, to make sure that the areas are safe for drivers, pedestrians, cyclists, crossings, that sort of thing. Health, inclusive street design actually can help people's health. Designated walking paths where it's safe to walk, designated cycle areas, promote good health and exercise. The environment, again, another key feature, requirement of inclusive street design, in that designing designated areas will make it more environmentally friendly, as in pedestrians have a separate area to walk on, so won't have so much car fumes. And also the economy, very important, an inclusive street design implementation makes an area attractive, makes people want to come to that area, which then builds the economy of that area. So why wouldn't you want to do it? And this is what this motion promotes. Now, I want to just give you, if you will allow me, just 3 examples of where poor street design has a really negative impact, and where, if the principles of inclusive street design were used, it'd be much better. So, at the bottom of Fleet Street, due to the works going on at the moment, the crossing has been moved. The crossing cycle of that crossing is so short now that you have to run across the road or you get stuck in the middle. Also, there's no actually identifiers to tell people who can't see where that crossing is. Secondly, the new taxi rank has been put temporarily opposite the pavilion. Again, to get to there, you're having to walk on muddy grass where the rain has made it sodden and it's not accessible. And it's dark. There's only a very small light, so if you're trying to catch a taxi at night, it's not good. Some boarding would be good to go down there. And finally, Fleet Walk itself. Where's the road? Where's the walking area? And probably the worst one, I think, for me personally, is shared areas, pedestrian and cycling paths. When you're walking along and suddenly a bike comes past. So this motion really asks the council to take on this in the inclusive street design proposals, so that when areas are being done, you look at these principles and you say, yes, we want to support our car drivers, yes, we want to support our pedestrians, and take everybody's requirements into account to make the area more beneficial for those items: safety, economy, environment, accessibility and health. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Darling. And we're going to go into the virtual room. Councillor Johns, I understand that you are supporting this.
I am, yes. Yes, I certainly am. I don't think I need to say any more. I think Councillor Mandy Darling's pretty much said it any more than I can, so I do.
Thank you, Councillor. So, any questions from the Cabinet to the promoter or supporter? Councillor Billings, do you want to lead on our response then?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Mandy Darling, for raising this important issue. I do agree that ensuring our streets work for everyone, including blind and partially sighted people and everyone else, is a really important issue. To assist me respond to what you're saying, I did some background research, and you're right that the RNIB did a report of seeing streets differently, which was published in November 2021, so 2 years ago. And I do agree that I don't think in that interim period anything's happened in the council differently to specifically pick up on some of those recommendations. So recognising that, we'd be happy to accept the motion before us. What I would suggest is alongside that there would need to be a sort of an instruction, because lots of the issues that you particularly spoke about in your presentation were more highways rather than town planning. And so I would propose that we would accept the motion as drafted before us, but also I will write as the Cabinet Member for Highways also to the relevant officers for them to take this on board in relation to highways matters as well, not just town planning ones. I hope that's an acceptable response. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, and I'm happy to second that from the Chair. Just for clarification, the Cabinet are requested to instruct the Director of Pride and Place to determine where Torbay Council's planning and transport policy conflicts with the principles of inclusive street design and associated government guidance, and where instructions to town planners may be improved as a result. That was the request that was put forward, and Councillor Billings is effectively proposing that to the Cabinet.
That's correct, that's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I'm effectively seconding that. Any further debate? which case happy to move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. We move on to the final item, which is item 10B, Notice of Motion, Powers to Address Antisocial Behaviour. And we'll take a similar route forward, if we may, by inviting the motion promoter, Councillor Steve Darling, to the table first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity. It's very welcome. And whilst antisocial behaviour has been an ongoing issue within our town centres, it has sadly spread out elsewhere. One can only reflect on the impact of Operation Loki, which was extremely welcome, but actually resulted in a level of displacement and perhaps continued antisocial behaviour in some of our more peripheral areas within our town centre. I'd also like to highlight that we did, in this notice of motion, give quite a long list of opportunities where PCSOs can be used, public space protection orders, and on our research as the opposition Lib Dems, we did look at what was being done in Weston-super-Mare, not a dissimilar seaside resort as we are in Torbay, but it was very interesting to note from their approach that they took a whole district approach around these public spaces protection orders rather than just in our town centres, and therefore one wouldn't be putting this antisocial behaviour out into the outskirts of the community. You could tackle it throughout. So we know that from our conversation with officers that you need to have collated evidence around this, and so we're hoping that this notice of motion will trigger that. I'm left with the impression some of this may already be underway, but there are areas that I know has been a bane in my community's lives and have shared their concerns, such as parking on grass verges that I understand in Weston-super-Mare and North Devon. That is an area that PSPOs have been applied to and can significantly impact in residential areas, making muddy ruts as the winter goes on and dust bowls in the summer. So those are areas that we would particularly like us to make sure that we've swept up in these opportunities here. And then also there are community warning notices that we've talked out in the notice of motion, something that I know that Teenbridge are, we have done some of this as a local authority, but we need to make sure that we've got the capacity to follow through on this. So I know that Teenbridge are particularly vaunted, and I know that all of us had the opportunity to attend an event that was facilitated by the Police and Crime Commissioner, where best practice was shared from Teenbridge, and they talked about a serving of some of these notices where there was continuous cannabis smoking from a particular house. They had done that in Teenbridge. When I shared this opportunity with officers of the local authority, they felt it wasn't appropriate to use such notices for that because it was a criminal offence. So I think there's conversations we should be having with Teenbridge to see what their best practices, so we can see whether we're able to apply those lessons learnt over there to actually tackle the antisocial behaviour that can be distressing. Because when I got back to the resident and shared the approach that the officer had encouraged her on, she said, I've given up on this matter. I'll just have to live and suffer with this because I don't want to engage with this anymore. So let's make sure that we're supporting our people as much as we possibly can by using the tools that are in the toolkit as much as we can. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Darling. Going to move into the virtual room for Councillor Carter, who is the supporter of this particular motion.
Thank you for allowing me to coming on Zoom to support this motion. I'm really pleased to support this. We've got to do what we can to reduce the antisocial behaviour. I know we are already doing things, but anything else to enrich this and really improve the situation on the streets out there will really help. And I'm really glad that also that we can talk to other councils as well and learn from them of what they've done, what's been successful and what hasn't been. And we can work together to improve this and use all these bits of toolkit, as they're calling it, to improve everything and give us some power as well to make the streets better for everyone. So, yeah, happy to support this.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Carter. Councillor Billings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Councillors and those in the audience watching, please be assured this Conservative administration was elected on a manifesto which promised, and I quote, to remove antisocial behaviour from our town centres. Now, when that was written, that was something that the councillors were very clearly supporting, and it wasn't an intention simply to push it down the road. It was to tackle a problem area that our residents, through all the community engagements, activities, identified to us. So it is a shared priority. We've already heard from the leader of the council earlier about how this administration is prioritising making our town centres safe and vibrant places to visit. And we're putting in extra resource into more enforcement. We'll be putting in extra resource into antisocial behaviour prevention and street wardens. And we'll be working with the police. And I'm sure in due course we'll hear far more developed proposals than what we've got the opportunity to go through now in responding to this motion. You mentioned PSPOs, Councillor Darling. Let me specifically highlight again some of the points that we heard from the leader earlier. We'll be consulting before Christmas on a bay-wide PSPO concerning dog fouling, and we'll be consulting early in the new year on a PSPO covering our town centres where there are issues with antisocial behaviour and other elements that are alongside that, primarily focused around alcoholism. I have gone through with our officers and with the superintendent line by line the other items that you have proposed in this motion. The clear guidance that I've been given unanimously by the superintendent, other members of the police and our officers is that some of the elements that are included in this motion that aren't the ones I've referred to are not best dealt with through a PSPO. And I think it's important to recognise that, for example, if we'd got Brixham colleagues here talking to us about issues in relation to Berry Head, they would be identifying that the PSPO that we already have at Berry Head hasn't been sufficient on its own to have fully resolved the issue. So it's not simply a case of the PSPOs. Councillor Darling, you were specifically, and you mentioned when you spoke, you talked about highways matters and parking on grass verges. Our officers are clear that, for example, those matters need to be dealt with by having appropriate double yellow lines. And for example, in relation to those, that's why Swissco have already brought back into commission previously decommissioned double yellow lining equipment so that those sorts of matters can be addressed in a different way. No one's saying those items that you've put in the notice here aren't important. What we're saying is we've got a slightly more nuanced approach into the way that they're being dealt with. And so that's why, Mr. Chairman, I'm proposing that we do not accept this motion, not because the matters raised are not important, but rather because there are already proposals in train that are developed in relation to many of them that are at a late stage that will come forward, and simply asking officers to investigate things where work's already been done would be a diversion of resources from tackling the key problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Lewis, I understand that you're about to second this.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And I think from your opening remarks, it showed that we mean business. We are putting more police. We have requested more police. We are putting more money into enforcement and putting more money in generally to help our high streets and our towns. We have listened to the public. We did put it in the manifesto. So on day one, when we arrived at the town hall, we made it a priority and we asked officers to investigate, to come up with solutions to the problem. And the motion covers a lot of those, and I'm glad that they have seen the writing on the wall and are supporting what we're doing, what we put in our manifesto. We are determined to make our streets a cleaner, safer and a more attractive place, not only to live in, to visit, but for the many businesses in our high streets that need a break and they need to be able to do what they do best, which is serving the public in a clean, safe environment. And I'm very happy to second this, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Barr, you indicated that you'd like to speak on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I absolutely want to support what Councillor Lewis and particularly Councillor Billings has just said. And what you said, I was very pleased to hear what you said at the start of this evening's meeting. We've really got to deal with antisocial behaviour. I was with residents in the Wellswood ward this morning. Just one example, you think of the Wellswood ward as being a very leafy and affluent part of the bay, but there are pockets of very different sorts of housing. What I heard from residents this morning who have been enduring the most extreme form of antisocial behaviour over the last 18 months. I was very, very upset indeed to hear the lack of response that they had received from the police, the lack of response that they had received from the Housing Association, who in theory manages, to use that word very loosely, the particular complex where there are a number of properties, but where there's extreme antisocial behaviour that they've been enduring for 18 months that has made an absolute misery of those residents' lives. And I was able to meet with them and want to take that forward, but we've got to work more effectively with the police. PSPOs, as we know from the other end, the attractive leafy end of the Wellswood ward at Hope Snows, and with Berryhead, PSPOs only work when you have the enforcement. Putting a PSPO in place does not by itself alter a problem or solve a problem. The PSPO that we had at Hope Snows that I supported twice, but twice was allowed to elapse. So it was interesting that these things lapsed. You've got to maintain the PSPOs and you've got to enforce the PSPOs. But it's the serious, serious antisocial behaviour that sadly is prevalent not just in our town centres, but in some of our residential areas. And that's the second time this year that I've been contacted by residents at Wellswood on 2 social housing developments where they've been enduring the most awful. And they've been pushed. The housing associations, our lot, say that we won't get involved because if it's a housing association, it's the housing association to solve. The housing associations who I contact say it's something for the police to solve. The police say, well, it should be the council, it should be the housing association. Yeah, that's just got to stop. We've got to take action to solve these issues of extreme antisocial behaviour that's making lives of residents in Wellswood and elsewhere a misery. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bye. And I would just emphasise, public space protection orders are step one of being able to resolve some of the many issues that we have, particularly in our town centres. But without the commitment to follow it up, to actually spend the money on the enforcement to actually deal with it, it effectively is just a piece of paper that unfortunately is meaningless. We've got a question on Thursday night coming to council that talks about the PSPOs in Brixham and the numbers issued, and the reality is it's no point having something unless you can actually enforce and you can actually work with it. And I also spoke at the beginning of the meeting, and I spoke about that single combined team working from a co-location within the town hall, and that is providing that focus on community protection warnings, community protection notices and criminal behaviour orders if it steps up to that particular scenario. But it is a case of having a one-stop shop that all of the right people are in the right room and can then actually deal properly with individuals. If they need mental health, they've got somebody from mental health there. If it's from somebody from the rough sleepers, there's there. If it is criminal, the police are involved. Instead of us being in a situation where an individual or an individual case, for want of a better word, is actually passed from department to department, what we're doing is we're pulling all of the departments together in a single one-stop shop. And so I think, you know, we recognise, you know, and I think in all honesty, politically, we're all on the same page because we recognise, you know, the Liberal Democrats have raised this as an issue. We already had this within our manifesto. We're all on the same page. We all want to deliver a solution, and I'm happy to support not accepting this tonight because effectively we've already got that available evidence through the surveys that we did previously, through our manifesto commitment, through the consultation caravan, and through the residents' place survey. You know, it's all come back indicating that this is a problem and we need to resolve it. Thank you. I don't think there's any further debate on this, so the motion is not to accept this notice of motion. All those in favour of refusing this motion, please indicate.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Where are we? 1850. Thank you very much. The meeting is closed. May wish you all a very Merry Christmas.